Dante Moretti was not asleep. His eyes were closed. His breathing was deep and controlled, and his powerful frame was reclined in the black leather chair behind his mahogany desk. To anyone watching through the doorway, he looked like a dangerous man allowing himself a rare moment of rest. But beneath those closed eyelids, Dante was wide awake. His mind was razor-sharp, calculating, and watching. This was a game Dante had played many times before. Dante was 42 years old and one of the most feared men in the city. He controlled shipping routes, politicians, judges, and entire neighborhoods. He had wealth most people couldn't fathom and power that could destroy lives with a single phone call. But over the years, Dante had lost something precious: trust. His own brother had tried to kill him for control of the family business. Women he'd loved had only wanted access to his bank accounts. His most trusted soldiers had sold information to his enemies. Even his household staff, people he paid generously, had stolen from him. Silver watches, rare wine, cash from his safe. Dante had come to believe in one simple truth: every human being on earth was greedy. Given the opportunity to take something without consequences, they would take it. Always. Today he would prove it again. On his desk, inches from his relaxed hand, sat a thick manila envelope. It was open, unsealed, almost careless-looking. Inside was $10,000 in cash, crisp $100 bills stacked and visible, spilling slightly out of the envelope as if forgotten by a distracted man. But Dante Moretti never forgot anything. Outside the bulletproof windows, cold autumn rain hammered against the glass. Inside his private study, the fireplace crackled, but the large room remained drafty and cold. Dante had deliberately left the temperature low. He'd set the stage perfectly. Now he waited. The door to the study opened quietly. Dante, still feigning sleep, heard soft footsteps, nervous, hesitant. A woman's footsteps. Grace Williams, Dante thought, keeping his breathing steady. His newest maid. She'd been working at the mansion for only 2 weeks. She was in her late 20s, a widow who cleaned houses to survive. Dante knew everything about her from his background check. Her husband had died in a construction accident 3 years ago, leaving her with nothing but debt and a 6-year-old daughter to raise alone. That daughter was here today. The local elementary school had closed due to severe flooding from the storm. Grace had no money for a babysitter. She'd begged the head of household, Mrs. Chen, for permission to bring her daughter to work, promising the child would be invisible and silent. Mrs. Chen had reluctantly agreed but warned Grace that if Mr. Moretti saw the girl, they would both be out on the street immediately. He didn't tolerate disruptions. Dante heard Grace's trembling whisper now, barely audible over the rain. "Amara, baby, listen to me very carefully." A small voice responded, soft and worried. "Yes, Mama. You see that corner by the bookshelf? Sit there on the floor. Do not move from that spot. Do not touch anything in this room. Do not make a sound. Mr. Moretti is sleeping in his chair." Dante felt a small surge of anticipation. So the daughter was here. The file said 6 years old. A first grader. "If you wake him up," Grace continued, her voice breaking with fear, "Mama will lose this job. We won't be able to pay rent. We'll have nowhere to go. Do you understand, baby?" "I understand, Mama." The little girl, Amara replied. Her voice sounded scared but obedient. "I won't move. I promise. I have to go clean the upstairs bathrooms. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Please, Amara. Please be good." "I will, Mama. I promise." Dante heard the door click shut. Grace was gone. Now it was just the Mafia boss and the child. Silence filled the room except for the crackling fire and the relentless rain outside. Dante kept his breathing slow and rhythmic. He waited. He expected to hear movement, the natural restlessness of a young child, the patter of small feet exploring, maybe the sound of her approaching the desk to look at the expensive items. But there was nothing, just silence. 5 minutes passed. Dante's neck was beginning to cramp from holding his position, but he didn't break character. He was patient. He'd waited hours before to catch thieves. She's being very careful, he thought. She's waiting to make sure I'm really asleep. Another 3 minutes passed. Then, finally, he heard it, the soft rustle of fabric. She was standing up. "Here we go." Dante thought, his muscles tensing slightly. The little thief is making her move. Dante heard soft footsteps approaching his desk. They were slow, hesitant, the light steps of a small child trying to be quiet. She was coming closer. Dante knew exactly what she was looking at. The money, $10,000 in cash, just sitting there, practically begging to be taken. A 6-year-old wouldn't understand the full value, but she would know it was money. She would know money meant food, toys, things her mother couldn't afford. Dante visualized the scene in his mind. She would reach up on her tiptoes, grab the envelope, and try to hide it. When her mother returned, they would leave. And in a few days, when Dante discovered the missing money, he'd have them both thrown out, maybe even arrested. It would be another data point proving his theory. Another confirmation that everyone, even children, would steal given the chance. The footsteps stopped. She was standing right beside his chair now. Dante could sense her small presence. He waited for the rustle of paper, the slight sound of the envelope being grabbed. But it didn't come. Instead, Dante felt something unexpected. A tiny hand gently touched his arm. The touch was feather-light, tentative, like a butterfly landing on his sleeve. What is she doing? Dante wondered, confused. Is she checking if I'm actually asleep? The small hand withdrew. Then Dante heard a soft sigh from the child, not greedy or scheming, but concerned, worried. You're shivering, he heard her whisper. The voice was so quiet it was almost lost under the sound of the rain. You shouldn't be cold. What? Dante's mind reeled. She's worried about me? Then he heard the sound of movement, fabric rustling. The child was taking off her jacket. What is this? Dante thought, his carefully constructed scenario falling apart. What is she doing? Then he felt it. A small weight settling over his shoulders and chest. She was draping her jacket over him like a blanket. The jacket was tiny, thin, slightly damp from the rain outside. It barely covered his torso, but it carried warmth, the warmth of her small body, the warmth of an act of pure care. Dante's heart, which had been cold and controlled, skipped a beat. The girl smoothed the small jacket gently over his shoulders with her tiny hands, adjusting it carefully so it wouldn't slip off. Then she whispered again, as if speaking to someone who might be sick. That's better. Mama says you should never let people get cold, even if they're sleeping. Dante lay there, completely stunned. This was not part of the script. She wasn't looking at the money. She was looking at him. She saw a person shivering and her instinct wasn't to take. It was to give. Then he heard movement at the desk. Dante thought, his cynicism resurging despite his shock. Here it is. Now that she's made herself look innocent, she takes the cash. But the money didn't move. Instead, Dante heard paper sliding across wood, a gentle, careful sound. Risking exposure, Dante opened his left eye just a fraction. A tiny crack hidden beneath his eyelashes. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. The little girl, Amara, was standing at his desk. She was small, with smooth brown skin and her hair pulled back in 2 puffy ponytails tied with worn rubber bands. She wore a faded pink dress that was too short for her, showing knobby knees, and yellow rubber cleaning gloves that were far too big for her small hands. Her sneakers had holes in the toes. She looked like she was playing dress-up in her mother's work supplies. She wasn't touching the money. She was pushing the envelope away from the edge of the desk where it had been dangerously close to falling. She moved it carefully with her gloved hands toward the center, near the lamp so it would be safe. Then she noticed something else. Dante's leather-bound planner had fallen on the floor near his foot. The little girl bent down, her movements careful and deliberate. She picked up the planner with both hands and gently brushed dust from the cover with her oversized yellow glove. She placed it carefully on the desk next to the money, making sure it was neat and aligned. Safe now, she whispered to herself. Then she turned and walked back to her corner. She sat down on the floor, pulled her knees to her chest, and wrapped her thin arms around herself. She was shivering. She'd given her only jacket to him, and now she was cold. Dante lay motionless, his mind completely blank. For the first time in 20 years, Dante Moretti didn't know what to think. He'd set a trap for a thief, but he'd caught an angel instead. The cynicism that had built up in his heart like concrete developed a small hairline crack. Why didn't she take it? Dante screamed internally. They're poor. I know they're poor. Her mother wears shoes with cardboard stuffed in the soles. Why didn't she take the money? Before Dante could process this, the study door opened again, this time fast, almost frantic. Grace rushed in. He could hear her breathless, panicked movement. She must have finished early. Or maybe she'd been too anxious to stay away. There was a sharp intake of breath. Grace had seen it. Her daughter's small jacket draped over the Mafia boss's shoulders. "Oh God," Grace whispered, her voice filled with absolute horror. "Oh God, no. No, no, no. Amara," she hissed, trying to keep her voice down but unable to hide her terror. "What did you do?" "Mama." He was shivering. Amara began, her small voice confused. "I just wanted." "You touched him." Grace's voice cracked with fear. "You put your jacket on him?" Grace ran to the chair. Dante felt her hands grab the small jacket, yanking it off his shoulders with shaking fingers. She was moving so frantically she nearly knocked over the lamp on his desk. "I'm sorry," Grace was whispering, though she thought he couldn't hear. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Moretti. Please don't wake up. Please, God, please." She grabbed Amara by the arm, pulling the child toward the door. "We're leaving," Grace said, her voice breaking with panic and tears. "We're leaving right now before he wakes up." Dante felt something twist painfully in his chest. This woman wasn't angry at her daughter for being kind. She was terrified of him. She was terrified that a simple act of compassion from a 6-year-old child would cost them everything. She's not scared of a criminal, Dante realized, his eyes still closed. She's scared of me. I've become the monster. And in that moment, Dante Moretti made a decision. It was time to wake up. Dante let out a low groan, loud, theatrical, the sound of a man being disturbed from sleep. Grace froze. He heard her stop breathing entirely. Dante shifted in his chair, slowly, deliberately. He opened his eyes and blinked several times, as if adjusting to the light. He looked at the ceiling first, then let his gaze drift slowly downward. Grace and Amara were standing near the door. Grace had positioned herself in front of her daughter, protective, shielding the child with her own body. Dante put on his best expression of cold anger. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed into dark slits. "What?" Dante said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that filled the room. "Is going on in my study?" "Mr. Moretti," Grace stammered, bowing her head submissively. "I am so sorry. The schools were closed because of the flooding. I had no choice but to bring my daughter. We're leaving right now, I swear. I didn't ask for excuses." Dante cut her off, his voice sharp as a blade. "I asked what is going on." He stood up slowly, deliberately using his full height and intimidating presence to loom over them. He was a tall, powerful man, and he knew how to use physical dominance. He looked at his desk, at the money still sitting there, exactly where Amara had pushed it to safety. Then he looked at his chair. There was a small damp spot on the Italian leather where Amara's wet jacket had rested. Dante pointed at it with a trembling finger, his face a mask of manufactured rage. "Do you see this?" he growled, his voice dripping with menace. Grace looked at the spot. Her face went even paler, all the blood draining from her cheeks. "This chair," Dante said slowly, each word deliberate and threatening, "is custom Italian leather. Cost $15,000. And now it's wet. It's ruined." "No, sir, please, I can dry it." Grace began desperately. "I have towels, I can." "Water stains leather permanently," Dante lied smoothly. "It needs professional restoration. That will cost me $1,000 to fix." He watched them both closely. This was the second test, the real test. He wanted to see if poverty and fear would break their bond. Would Grace scream at her daughter? Would the little girl break down and blame her mother? Would desperation turn them against each other the way it had turned so many people against him? Grace looked at the spot, then at Dante, then at her daughter. Tears began streaming down her face, silent and devastating. "Mr. Moretti, please," she begged, her voice raw with desperation. I don't have $1,000. I haven't even gotten my first paycheck yet. Please, I'm begging you, take it from my wages. I'll work for free for as long as it takes. Just please, please don't hurt my baby. Please, sir. Dante's eyes narrowed. She was offering to work without payment. That was unusual. But he wasn't done testing. He looked down at Amara, who was standing behind her mother's leg, her small eyes wide with fear but not crying. The yellow rubber gloves looked absurd on her tiny hands. And you, Dante said, pointing directly at the child with an accusatory finger. You did this. You ruined my chair. What do you have to say for yourself? Amara stepped forward, out from behind her mother's protective stance. She wasn't crying. Her small face was very serious, solemn beyond her years, but Dante could see her hands shaking inside the oversized gloves. She reached into the pocket of her worn pink dress with difficulty, the gloves making her movements clumsy. I don't have $1,000, sir, Amara said softly, her child's voice barely above a whisper. But I have this. She pulled her small hand out of her pocket and opened her palm. In the center of her hand, dwarfed by the yellow rubber glove, sat a small, tarnished bracelet. It was cheap metal, probably silver-plated copper, with years of wear dulling its surface. One of the tiny links was bent. To anyone else, it would look like worthless junk, something you'd find at the bottom of a toy box. But the way Amara held it, gently, reverently, with both gloved hands supporting it like it was made of glass, it might as well have been made of diamonds. This was my daddy's, Amara explained, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. He gave it to Mama on their wedding day. When Daddy went to heaven, Mama gave it to me so I would always remember him. Grace let out a gasp that sounded like a physical wound. Amara, no. Baby, you don't have to. But Amara didn't stop. She looked up at Dante, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. You can have it, she said simply, to pay for your chair. I know it's not worth $1,000 because it's not gold or anything fancy, but it's all I have. It's my most special thing in the whole world. She stepped forward on her small legs and carefully placed the bracelet on Dante's mahogany desk, right next to the envelope of cash. Her movements were precise, deliberate, as if she were handling something sacred. Please, sir, Amara said quietly, looking up at him with enormous brown eyes that held no guile, no manipulation, only pure sincerity. Don't punish my mama. She works really, really hard. This was my fault because I wanted to help you not be cold. Take my bracelet. And if it's not enough, I can do chores. I'm good at sweeping. Just please don't make Mama lose her job because then we won't have food. Dante stood frozen, completely immobilized. He was staring at $10,000 in cash on his desk, more money than this child would see in years. And next to it, a worthless bracelet that meant everything. This 6-year-old girl who had nothing, who wore a dress 2 sizes too small and shoes with holes, who was shivering in a cold room because she'd given her only jacket to a stranger, was offering him her most precious possession. Not to save herself, to save her mother. Dante felt something break inside his chest. It was sharp and violent, like a frozen lake cracking under the pressure of spring. He realized in that devastating moment that this little girl, who was poor enough to wear rubber cleaning gloves because they were warmer than nothing, who couldn't afford to miss a single day of her mother's work, was richer than Dante Moretti would ever be. He had millions of dollars. He had power, fear, control. But he would never sacrifice his most precious possession for anyone. He'd spent his entire adult life taking from people, and this child had spent her short life giving. The silence in the room stretched out, heavy and suffocating. The rain continued to pound against the windows like accusations. Dante picked up the tiny bracelet. His large, scarred hand was shaking. The bracelet looked impossibly small in his palm, fragile, worthless. You, Dante whispered, his voice no longer a growl but something broken and raw. You would give me this? For a wet chair? Yes, sir, Amara said, nodding seriously. Is it enough? If it's not enough, I can give you my favorite rock too. It's really shiny. Dante closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, he saw flashes of his life. His sons from his failed marriage, grown men now, who only called when they wanted money for drugs or gambling debts. They'd never given him anything. Never sacrificed anything for him. His brother, who'd put a gun to his head over territory. His ex-wife, who'd taken half his fortune and immediately married his rival. All the soldiers, the associates, the staff who'd stolen, lied, betrayed. But this girl, this tiny stranger, this target of his cruel test, had given him everything without hesitation. Yes, Dante whispered, opening his eyes. They were wet with tears he hadn't cried in 2 decades. Yes, Amara. It's enough. It's more than enough. It's worth more than everything I own. Dante slumped back into his chair. The act was over. He couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't play the villain. He felt exhausted, not from physical strain, but from the crushing weight of his own shame and self-hatred. Grace, Dante said quietly, his voice completely changed. It was no longer the voice of a mafia boss. It was the voice of a tired, broken man who'd just seen his entire worldview shattered by a 6-year-old in rubber gloves. Sit down, please. Sir. Grace looked utterly confused, frightened by the sudden shift in his demeanor. I said sit down, Dante repeated, then softened further. Please, just sit. Both of you. I need to tell you something. Grace hesitantly sat on the edge of the leather sofa, pulling Amara onto her lap and holding the child protectively. They both looked terrified, unsure of what was coming next. Dante picked up the tiny bracelet and turned it over in his hands, his large fingers tracing the tarnished metal with unexpected gentleness. I need to confess something, Dante said, staring at the bracelet instead of them. The chair isn't ruined. It's just water. It'll dry in an hour. There's no damage at all. Grace let out a shaky breath, her whole body sagging with relief. Oh, thank God. And, Dante continued, looking up at them with eyes that were red and raw, I wasn't asleep. The room went silent except for the rain. Grace's eyes went wide with shock and betrayal. You weren't. No. Dante shook his head slowly. I was pretending. I do this sometimes. I test people. I'm a paranoid, bitter man. Grace. I left that money on my desk on purpose. He pointed to the cash with a gesture of disgust. I wanted to see if you would steal it. I wanted to catch you in the act. I wanted proof that everyone is a thief. Grace pulled Amara tighter against her chest, looking wounded and angry. You were testing us? Like we're rats in a trap. Yes, Dante admitted, his voice thick with self-loathing. I'm a monster, Grace. I thought everyone was corrupt. I thought everyone had a price. I've been betrayed so many times that I stopped believing goodness existed in the world. He pointed a shaking finger at Amara, who was watching him with wide, confused eyes. But your daughter. Dante's voice cracked completely. Tears began running down his face. The first tears he'd cried since his mother's funeral 20 years ago. She didn't take the money. She covered me because she thought I was cold. She protected the cash from falling because she wanted to keep it safe for me. And then, his voice broke into a sob. Then she offered me her father's bracelet. The only thing she has left of him. To save you. To protect you. Dante wiped his face roughly with his hand, not caring that his maid was watching him cry. I have billions of dollars, Grace. I have mansions, cars, soldiers, power over this entire city. But I would never give up my most precious possession for anyone. I wouldn't sacrifice anything for anyone. He looked at Amara through his tears. But your daughter, who has nothing, who shivers in the cold, who wears shoes with holes, gave me everything. Without thinking. Without asking for anything in return. Dante stood up and walked to the fireplace, needing to turn away from them. He stared into the flames, his shoulders shaking. I've lost my way, he whispered to the fire. I have all this wealth, but I'm spiritually dead inside. I'm empty. You have nothing, Grace. But you've raised a queen. You've raised someone with a heart of pure gold. He turned back to them, his face wet with tears. The test is over, and you passed. Both of you. You showed me that goodness still exists, that kindness is real, that not everyone is corrupt. Dante walked to his desk and picked up the envelope of cash. He walked over to Grace and held it out to her with both hands, offering it like a peace offering. Take this, he said softly. Grace shook her head vigorously, pulling back. No, sir. I don't want your money. I don't want charity. I just want to work. I want to earn my keep honestly. It's not charity, Dante interrupted gently. It's payment. Payment for the most valuable lesson I've ever learned. A lesson I desperately needed. Your daughter just taught me something worth more than all my money. Grace hesitated, looking at the envelope, then at Amara's worn shoes and thin dress. Please, Dante said, his voice breaking. Buy your daughter a warm coat. Buy her new shoes that fit. Pay your rent for the next few months so you can breathe. Take it. I'm begging you. With trembling hands, Grace reached out and took the envelope. Thank you, Mr. Moretti, she whispered, fresh tears streaming down her face. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Dante said, and for the first time in years, a small, genuine smile touched his lips. It felt strange on his face, unfamiliar, like using muscles that had atrophied. I have another proposition. For Amara. The little girl looked up at him, her eyes still wide. For me? She asked in her small voice. Yes, Dante said. He held up the tiny bracelet, the tarnished metal catching the firelight. I'm keeping this. You gave it to me as payment, so it's mine now. Amara's face fell slightly, but she nodded with a maturity beyond her 6 years. Okay, a deal is a deal. That's what Mama says. But, Dante continued, kneeling down with difficulty so he was eye level with the child. I can't accept such a valuable gift without giving something in return. That wouldn't be fair. He took a deep breath, the words coming from somewhere deep and honest inside him. I'm a very lonely man, Amara. I have a big house, but no one in it who cares about me as a person. Everyone wants my money or my power, but no one sees me. Do you understand? Amara nodded slowly. Like how people were mean to the beast until Belle was nice to him? Dante let out a surprised laugh, the sound rusty and strange. Yes, exactly like that. You saw me shivering and you gave me your jacket. You didn't see a scary mafia boss. You saw a person who was cold. He paused, gathering his courage. So here's my offer, and you can say no if you want. Would you like to come here after school sometimes? Maybe 3 days a week? You can do your homework in this study. You can read books from my library. And you can teach this grumpy old man how to be kind again. How to be human. And in exchange, Dante continued, his voice gentle, I'll make sure you have everything you need. New clothes that fit. Warm coats. Good shoes. I'll pay for any school supplies, field trips, anything you need. And when you grow up, if you want to go to college, I'll pay for that too. All of it. He held out his large, scarred hand. Deal? Amara looked at her mother. Grace was crying openly now, nodding through her tears, unable to speak. Amara looked back at Dante and smiled. A gap-toothed, beautiful smile that lit up her entire face. Deal, she said in her small, clear voice. She placed her tiny hand in his large one, and they shook. Dante Moretti, the mafia boss who trusted no one, who believed in nothing but power and money, had just made a promise to a 6-year-old girl who'd shown him that kindness still existed. One more thing, Dante said, still holding the bracelet. This isn't payment for the chair anymore. This is my most precious possession now. I'm going to keep it safe, and one day, when you're all grown up, I'll give it back to you, restored and beautiful. That's a promise. 10 years passed. The Moretti mansion, once a cold fortress of marble and suspicion, slowly transformed. Amara came 3 times a week, just as promised. At first, she did her elementary school homework at the small table in Dante's study while he worked. But gradually, slowly, Dante began to talk to her. Not about business, not about violence or power, about life, about stories, about what it meant to be good. She told him about school, about her friends, about the books she was reading. She told him about missing her father, about her mother's strength, about her dreams of maybe becoming a teacher one day. And Dante, for the first time in decades, listened with his whole heart. He started asking her questions. Why do you think people are mean sometimes, Amara? And she would answer with the simple, profound wisdom of a child. Because they're sad inside and don't know how to say it. The mansion changed. Dante started smiling. His staff noticed he stopped testing them, stopped suspecting them of theft. He gave bonuses at Christmas. He asked about their families. When Amara turned 10, Dante threw her a birthday party in the mansion garden with a bouncy castle and a magician. He'd never thrown a party for anyone before. He attended every school play, every recital, every parent-teacher conference as if he were her grandfather. Grace stopped cleaning houses. Dante paid for her to go back to school. She became a licensed social worker, helping families in crisis. And every night before bed, Dante looked at the tiny bracelet he kept in a velvet box in his desk drawer. He'd had it professionally restored, the tarnished metal now gleaming, fitted with a delicate diamond clasp. But he'd kept the original worn patina on parts of it, the proof of its history, the evidence that poverty and wealth were measured in the wrong currency. The mansion filled with warmth, with laughter, with the sound of a teenage girl arguing good-naturedly with a hardened criminal about whether homework was actually necessary. Dante Moretti, the man who'd believed in nothing, had found something worth believing in. But time, as always, continued its march. 3 days ago, Dante Moretti died peacefully in his sleep, in the same black leather chair where the test had happened 10 years before. His heart simply stopped, worn out at 52, exhausted from years of violence and stress before Amara had arrived. The study was full of people now. Lawyers in expensive suits. Dante's 2 adult sons from his first marriage, Marcus and David, looking impatient and checking their phones, already planning how to spend their inheritance. His ex-wife, who'd remarried and wore diamonds Dante's money had bought years ago. And in the corner, sitting quietly wearing black, Amara Williams, now 16 years old, a junior in high school. Next to her sat Grace, now a licensed social worker with her own small office downtown. They both looked devastated, their eyes red from days of crying. The lawyer, Mr. Castellano, cleared his throat. "We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of Dante Moretti." Marcus and David sat forward eagerly, already calculating their shares. Mr. Castellano adjusted his glasses and began reading in a formal tone. "To my sons, Marcus and David Moretti, I leave the trust funds that were established for you at birth. You have each received monthly allowances of $50,000 for the past 10 years. In that decade, you visited me exactly 3 times, always to ask for more money, never to simply talk. I assume money is all you desire from me. You have your millions. Enjoy them." The sons looked annoyed but satisfied. They started to stand, preparing to leave, not caring to hear the rest. "Wait," Mr. Castellano said firmly. "There is more." The sons sat back down, confused and irritated. "To the rest of my estate," the lawyer continued, "including my companies, my properties, my investments, my liquid assets, and all personal possessions, I leave everything to Miss Amara Williams." The room exploded into chaos. "What?" Marcus Moretti shouted, jumping to his feet. "The maid's daughter? This is absolutely insane." He was clearly senile, David added, his face red with rage. "She manipulated him. She tricked a lonely old man. This will can be contested." Amara sat frozen, her hand covering her mouth in shock, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Castellano raised his hand for silence, his voice cutting through the noise. Mr. Moretti anticipated this exact reaction. He left a letter explaining his decision in his own words. He instructed me to read it aloud to everyone present. He unfolded a handwritten letter, Dante's familiar angular handwriting covering the page in black ink. The lawyer began to read. "To my sons and to the world, you will say I've lost my mind. You will claim that Amara Williams manipulated me, tricked me, seduced me somehow for my fortune. You're wrong. I'm not giving her my money because I was fooled. I'm paying a debt. 10 years ago, on a cold autumn evening, I was not a rich man. I was a spiritual beggar. I was empty inside, cold, dying slowly from bitterness and hate. A 6-year-old girl saw me shivering. Not a mafia boss, not a dangerous criminal, but a human being who was cold, and she gave me her jacket, her only jacket. In a freezing room, she chose to shiver so I wouldn't. She could have stolen $10,000 from my desk. It was right there, easy to take, enough to change her life. She didn't. She protected it. She made sure it was safe for me. And when I threatened her mother with ruin, when I tried to break them with fear, this little girl, who had nothing, offered me everything. A tarnished bracelet that was worthless to anyone else but priceless to her. The only thing she had left of her father. She gave it to me to save her mother. She gave me everything, expecting nothing in return. That moment saved my life. Changed me completely. Amara taught me that the poorest hand can hold the richest heart. That kindness is real. That goodness exists. That love doesn't require a transaction or a reward. She gave me 10 years of laughter, warmth, and hope. She taught me how to be human again. She gave me a family. She gave me a reason to be better. She gave me back my soul, which I thought was dead. So I leave her my fortune. It's a tiny payment for what she gave me, which was worth infinitely more than money. To my sons, I'm sorry I failed you as a father. I raised you in a world of violence and greed and forgot to teach you about compassion. I hope someday you learn what I learned from a 6-year-old child. But I'm not optimistic. To Amara, use this wealth better than I did. Build instead of destroy. Give instead of take. I know you will because that's who you are. You saved me. Now save others. I love you like the daughter I never had. Thank you for seeing me. Dante Moretti. Mr. Castellano finished reading. The room was completely silent except for the sound of Amara sobbing. The lawyer reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small velvet box. Miss Williams, he said gently, walking over to her. Mr. Moretti wanted you to have this personally. Amara took the box with shaking hands. She opened it slowly. Inside, resting on white silk, was the bracelet. Her father's bracelet. But it had been completely transformed. The tarnished metal was now polished to a brilliant shine. The bent link had been expertly repaired. Where it once had a simple clasp, there was now a delicate diamond closure that caught the light. But Dante had kept the original worn metal visible. The patina of age and love still there. The proof of its history and meaning. Amara picked up the bracelet with trembling fingers. Fresh tears poured down her face. She didn't care about the mansions or the millions or the companies or the power. She didn't care about any of it. She just missed her friend. The grumpy, broken man who'd helped her with her algebra homework, who'd taught her to play chess, who'd listened to her talk about her day, who'd loved her like a grandfather. Amara stood up and walked slowly to Dante's desk, the same mahogany desk where this had all begun a decade ago. She placed the bracelet carefully on the polished surface, right next to where the envelope of money had once sat. Safe now, she whispered through her tears, repeating the same words her 6-year-old self had said 10 years ago. Grace came and put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. They stood together, looking at the empty black leather chair where Dante used to sit. He was a good man, baby, Grace whispered. He just needed someone to see it. He was... Amara agreed, her voice breaking. He just needed a jacket. 5 years later, Amara Williams, now 21 years old and in her final year of college, stood in front of a newly constructed community center in the poorest neighborhood of the city. The building was beautiful, modern and welcoming, with bright colors and large windows. Above the entrance, a bronze plaque read, "The Dante Moretti Community Center, because the poorest hand can hold the richest heart." Amara had used Dante's fortune exactly as he'd hoped. She'd built a network of community centers, free after-school programs, scholarship funds, job training programs, and family support services across the city. She'd established a foundation that gave interest-free loans to single mothers. She'd created mentorship programs pairing at-risk youth with positive role models. She didn't live in Dante's mansion. She'd converted it into a group home for foster children, a warm place where kids who had nothing could feel safe and loved. She drove a modest car, lived in a small apartment, and spent 16-hour days working to help families like hers had been. People constantly asked her, "How did you build all this? How did you become so successful so young?" And Amara would smile, touch the restored bracelet she wore every single day on her wrist, and say, "I didn't buy my success. I earned it with kindness." A bitter man once taught me that the only currency that never loses value is compassion. He gave me a fortune, but years before that, I gave him something more valuable. I gave him hope that goodness still existed. She looked up at the community center, watching families walk through the doors to receive help, to find resources, to be treated with dignity. Don Moretti had all the power in the world, she said softly. But he was empty until a simple act of kindness taught him how to love. That's the real lesson. Kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything. Can change the world. Can save a soul. Saved his. And in return, he saved mine. Amara smiled and walked into the center, ready to help the next family in need, carrying forward the legacy of a mafia boss who learned that the poorest hand can indeed hold the richest heart. If you enjoyed the story, remember, in a world that often rewards greed and selfishness, be the person who gives their jacket to a stranger. Be the person who protects instead of takes. Be the person who sees humanity in everyone. Because kindness is the only investment that never fails. It's the only currency that truly matters. And it has the power to transform even the coldest heart.